Welcome to Speakernomics, the official podcast of the National Speakers Association. I'm Kenneth Kinney, but friends call me Shark. And like you, I'm a professional speaker and I love listening to Speakernomics. Speakernomics is a professional speaker show that will help you thrive and grow a speaking business so you too can change the world, one keynote session, workshop, and speech at a time. And on this episode, we welcome George Hedley. And if you're curious about this George, well, he's known as the Hard Hat Biz Coach. He is an author, a speaker, a CSP, as well as a construction industry speaker specializing in helping company owners and managers build successful companies, grow and profit. He runs the Hard Hat Biz School online university and was even named Business Coach of the Year by PBCA. George, welcome to Speakernomics. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm great. Thanks for having me today. Hopefully we can have some fun.
Absolutely. Now, to all my speaking friends, what does it take to become the big fish in a deep pond and own your niche and rise as the go-to expert in your industry? After all, who wants to be a minnow when you can be, well, sounds like me, a big shark? But seriously, it's keeping on top of what's going on in the industry and being a top name people recognize on what works and what doesn't, and being one where people want to learn from you. How do you stand out in that crowded field, be an expert, and still be a recognizable and amazing speaker? And before we jump in, make sure to go to Speakernomics.com. That's where you can find the tips, insights, and knowledge to help you become a better speaker, build a better business, and get paid to speak. George, let's dive in. So you're known as the Hard Hat Biz Coach. You've worked in the construction industry. But in the speaking world, what steps did you take early on to claim that expert status in such a crowded space?
Well, when I first joined NSA and wanted to be a speaker, I got inspired to start using some of my knowledge. And so, of course, I want to change the world and balance everybody's lives and give them a purpose and talk about all the stuff I'm not very good at. Just like everybody, I've got this big vision of perfection of all my clients, everybody I speak to. But finally, I realized it was kind of like beating my head against the wall. I figured you might as well go with what's brought you there. So I started focusing after few years of basically hard work and no results towards the construction industry. So I made a real strong effort to contact the top construction industry associations in the United States. Back then, there was a book of associations. I can't even remember the name of it anymore, but it was a book, and I literally went through the whole book, 800 pages, and I highlighted all the construction associations that had a budget of $1 million or some amount, and had meetings, and I started a mailing campaign. There was no internet, there was no email, and then I moved it to a really high-end fax program. That's FAX. You remember what that is. Yeah. So I've been doing this a while. So I used to send out a newsletter every month that said, need a great speaker for construction industry. I'd love to do your workshops, your keynote, breakouts, facilitate your board of directors meeting, whatever I could do to help you. And so over time, just that bombardment of continuous marketing materials out to those, at one time, it was me as 800 pieces going out every month or two, and eventually started getting some inquiries that turned into some business. And another way I do it, I'd call the local chapters of the National Association of Fill in the Blanks, painting, plumbing, electrical, you name it, because I'm in Southern California. Everybody's got a chapter here. And I would call it the chapter exec, and I'd say, hey, I'd love to do a program for your local meeting. I know you don't have any money. Just give me some chicken and I'm happy. And, but I want a referral. I want a referral to the state and the national that you say I'm great. And then the rest just started happening. So the key was for me to focus on what I know, help people I can help. So I know a lot about business, making money, running the crews, running the jobs, bidding, negotiating, all the contract stuff, because I was a general contractor for 30 plus years, building commercial office industrial buildings, and I built up a nice business doing 40, 50 million a year. And so I already had a platform as, sort of somebody's pretty good or an expert or whatever you want to call it. So basically just get focused. That's the key. And that's what I did.
Did you find when you narrowed that focus, we hear this often from speakers who worry that narrowing that focus too much limits their opportunity. But did you find that there were enough speaking opportunities in the field alone? And again, the construction industry is massive. It's huge. It's a couple of $1 trillion in our economy and employs millions of people, tons of associations, as you mentioned. But did you find that limiting at all?
Well, it's restrictive unless you really know the business, meaning you just go in there and have one program on leadership. I got to tell them how to make money, how to run their jobs, how to bid, how to price, know their numbers. So I had to get deep, and I started creating workshops, 5 or 6 different topics. I didn't just have one big keynote, hit them and run. And so I did have some keynotes on how to build your business, but every audience, it's not just the owners, it's the salespeople for the suppliers and the vendors and the associates, the attorneys are there. So you have to have a generic speech, but then to get into the heads of the audience, you have to have the meat, how to run a job, how to manage your crews, how to price or negotiate a contract. So you have to get real specific. So there's a lot of topic opportunities in one industry. Now, speaking opportunities, construction, they don't go out and hire $100,000 speakers. So, getting that big keynote fee is, they might bring in a $20,000 or $30,000 speaker at their annual convention, and then the rest are, smaller. And I always tried to do the keynote and 2 or 3 breakouts on 3 different topics to try to make it a better deal for me and them, and still be within their budget. So that would be the restriction. I'm getting hired to go speak to the eyeglass guys. Well, I have to really work hard for those guys. I don't know their business. It's actually more work when you don't know the business, unless you're just doing the generic leadership or management topic.
True. Well, how should someone like you who's been an industry expert break away from just that into being a professional speaker as opposed to just an industry expert who speaks? Because we saw this during COVID. We're probably going to see this a lot more when AI displaces a lot of especially the white collar jobs. But it is important to always, and I remember I credit Meredith Elliott Powell starting out Influence in 2024, where she talked about our job as professional speakers to be better than those typical industry experts. And, I know you've applied yourself that way as well so that you can stand apart from just an industry expert.
Well, I met a lady actually at my church, and we kind of got along well, and we did some joint teaching at church on different, I used to do money management at my church, and that got me into this presenting and helping people business. And she said, "Come with SA." So I went, and I never missed a meeting for years. Every Saturday, first Saturday of the month, to go there. I worked my way up the chairs, went to every conference, went to every NSA convention. I just kept applying and learning, and I'm an engineer, and I took a lot of how to speak, how to train the trainer, all those kind of classes. I just kept trying to get better and better. And because I'm just kind of a hard beat him in the head guy, and that doesn't work all the time unless you got certain kind of people in the room. But I had to learn how to ask questions and listen and interaction. And, so I worked really hard on my presentation, training, interaction skills along the way. I had a couple times I had some writers help me beef up my keynote because I was pretty dry. I was pretty much an engineer speaking away, and so I just worked hard at it. I don't know what else to say. Spend money, make money, spend money. I just hired a guy just last week. I just got off the phone with him to work with me on my YouTube channel, and that costs money. It's a big number, but hopefully it'll pay back 50% of what I paid him. That's a joke.
Yeah. The question I want to ask you, since you come from this industry, you speak the language of construction pros. How important is it for speakers to become fluent in the culture, the pain points and mindsets of their chosen industry. Because I know a lot of people who they'll tell me, oh, those are my people. That's the industry that I know and love. And then I've spoken with some of them in some industry, and then we'll have a conversation about, it'd be like if I didn't know very much about construction, you could spot it pretty quickly. And
Yeah.
you hear that sometimes on occasion with people, and it can be difficult to navigate the real language as opposed to somebody that just took an immersive language course and thought they were fluent after a couple of days and a couple of chat GPT searches, if you will.
Yeah, well, I just spoke at project management conference that wasn't contractors, and I had to spend a ton of time in a pipe manufacturing conference too, because they think it's dirty in construction, but it's not. It takes a lot of time, but I try hard and ask a lot of questions. But for me, I remember speaking at the National Fill-in-the-Blank Construction Conference. It was a big conference, a couple thousand people. And the lady who spoke in front of me was a CSP. I think she's a CPA. And she spoke on, I can't remember the topic exactly. And there were mostly architects in the room, which are not contractors. They draw the plans and create the building plans and ambiance, etc. And she said, now, when you guys bid the job, well, architects don't bid. They propose. They present their capabilities. Boy, the whole room got quiet and nobody listened to her the rest of the day. Just that one little word. When I talk to architects, they propose. You talk to contractors, they negotiate or bid. So it's just little subtleties that will kill you if you're not careful. So I'm from the industry. My first job out of college was working for a structural engineer and then a contractor. I've been in it ever since I was 22 or 3 years old. And I don't know everything about everything, but I know enough to be pretty good at what I do. And, the subtleties and what they need to do to get it right and the tips to not make problems. And, you just learn by doing. And now I have 60 ongoing clients on retainer that are all contractors all over the country as a coach, as a consultant. And, I'm in their office. Peer group meetings. I hold 3 peer group meetings a year with twice a year. We're face to face, working out all the problems, best practices. So I'm just in it. I know it, and I listen to what everybody else does. And then I learn. I've learned more from my clients that, we all think we know it all. We don't until you get into their offices, in their face, and look at their P&L and go out on their jobs and talk to their managers, and you go, uh-oh, what I think is not working. And I've changed a lot of stuff, how I present, how I help coach, systems, checklists, you name it. I wrote a book, and it's been out 10 years, and I'm in the process right now of rewriting it.
How important has publishing, especially with books, whether it's articles or books or trade columns or anything like that, been in cementing your reputation as an expert in your field? And the reason I ask is obviously a lot of speakers have books, but a lot of industry experts, especially in any industry, aren't necessarily going to write a book about it. I think people sometimes take for granted, we discount thinking that everybody has a book, but not everybody inside of an industry does. So how has that helped you, and how important has that been in helping distinguish yourself as an expert in your field?
Well, one of my initial early marketing decisions was to write for industry trade magazines. So I contacted about 20, the biggest ones in the country, that go to every state, every plumber gets this magazine, every small business contractor gets this magazine, masonry, steel. So I've got all those magazines that I write for every month. I wrote for Construction Business Owner magazine, which is my perfect market, for 22 years straight. I was the lead columnist because I was pushing to get in. I started writing articles. So once I started writing 1,000 to 2,000 word articles, some are only 800, every month, diligently. I did one a month. I've done it for 20 years, almost 25 years. I got over 200 to 300 articles now, and they've all been published. And everyone says, for more information, call George. That's got my picture in it. Now, do I get a lot of leads from that? No, but I get credibility. I get a lot. Oh, I know you. They call me. They already know me. When they call me, I got them. They're my client. I'm either going to come to their office and work with their management team, or they're going to hire me to do a workshop for their field guys or their office people, or they're going to have me recommend me in a conference. I mean, I got two calls. I don't even know these guys. And one guy wanted a 2-day program, and one guy wanted a 1-day, and they're huge companies, $500 million companies. And I was in there doing the program on field and project management, mastery. Got mastery. I got that word. Stole that from one of the big boys. And but it just, getting your name out there. So the book. So along the way, I decided to write the book as my first 12 chapters. And then it didn't have enough words. So then I wrote the next year, the next 12, part 2 of each chapter. So I ended up with 12 chapters of about a 350-page book. So my book, I got inspired years ago by reading Gerber's E-Myth. Probably know that book, like everybody. And it gets you motivated to organize and systemize your company, but it didn't tell you how to do it. So I made a goal to make my book how to do it. So my book is almost like a textbook, how to manage, organize, systemize your company. So because of that, a lot of people use it as a textbook. It's not really written like a textbook. It's got some stories and examples, but it's got a lot of charts, a lot of templates, a lot of checklists. How to run a management meeting. Here's the 7 things that you do in your management meeting. Here, how to review a bid before you send it out. What your proposals should look like. So all those kinds of things are in there with examples. And that it's, I don't know how many I've sold. I sell them through Amazon, probably, I don't know, 5,000 or who knows? I don't know. I just get a check every month, which is kind of nice. And initially I went to the Maui Book Conference because I heard that was where you're supposed to go to find a publisher. And I had my idea. My book's called How to Build a Construction Company That Always Makes a Profit. And they thought, I like you. I like your idea. I like your submittal. I just don't want it for a contract. I want it for the world. So I go, okay. So he gave me a $10,000 advance to write, get your business to work. So I wrote about dress stores and retail and shopping centers. Had to change all my stuff. And I sold like 2 copies, He gave me $10,000, about 2,000. So I broke even. I think I got total, whatever you call it, book, the money from the book publisher. I think I made about $300 in 20 years.
Yeah. Well, for a speaker who is narrowing their focus on a specific niche, what's the single most important action you think they can take today to start so that they can become the big fish?
Well, I would say I've done this program before a couple times at the NSA. I did it about 10 years ago at National. I've done it local a lot. And not a lot, but some. And people, like you said, they think it's going to shrink the market. Well, it would if you're, picking something that's really small. But there's so many opportunities in construction. So the key is just decide. You got to, what do they say? You got to be a topic expert or an industry expert. I mean, the top negotiating guy, I can give you his name. The top sales speaker, I can give you his name. The top humorist, we all know those guys, right? They speak every year at the conference. Yeah. But those guys make money. They make good money. So you can do training. You can do mastermind peer groups. You can do sell. I've done 25 hours of videos. It's online. I sell it every day. I get a check comes through every day from my online school. I'm going in a few weeks to do 20 10-minute videos at a guy's office. The guy's helping me. And I'm going to sell them all, right? And I've done workbooks. So I'll go do a workshop, a 3-hour, 4-hour workshop for somebody in the afternoon or whatever for their team. And I'll have a nice handout, maybe 20-page handout of, a workbook handout. And that becomes my workbook that goes with my tapes. Or not tapes anymore, right? It's all online, but still. And then I got a part-time editor, and work, Upwork, et cetera, and cleans them up. But, there's just so many opportunities. And the guys will bring me in to audit their companies now. and I'll give them a work plan. We'll meet with all their employees. That we'll do a strategic planning session. We do that. Then I meet with the owners on a monthly or quarterly basis, and then I have peer groups. So the peer groups is more money than the speaking. I used to speak a lot, but it's a lot of travel, right? So when you get older like me and you lose all your hair, I used to have like one strand, but now I have none. But, it's just, I don't know how you do that. Just being keynote. A lot of people are, I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying for me, this is what's best for me.
Now for a little speaking trivia. What is the largest construction industry conference and trade show in the U.S.? Back with the answer in just a moment. Before we jump back to the show, here's a moment with NSA member, Hall of Fame speaker, CSP, and author, Simon T. Bailey. Simon, what does being part of NSA mean to you in your speaking business?
I think being a part of NSA is being a part of a global collective that is providing what I would call the ability to hear, heal, and help. So the amazing voices that we have been blessed to hear, where we call ourselves speakers, authors, trainers, consultants, coaches, however we show up in NSA, there is an inclusive environment where every voice matters. There is an opportunity to connect with individuals on this journey called life, to know that we all have the ability to hug people with our words, however we show up. And we also recognize that we just don't make what I would call that imprint, but we leave an impact that truly touches people, their head, their hearts, and their hands. So NSA is this commitment of individuals to really understand, how do we love people as people are hurting, and how do we provide strategies with compassion and outcomes that they can trace back to someone from the NSA family that has added value to their lives.
And here's the answer. Held every 3 years, the largest construction industry conference and trade show in the U.S. is ConExpo ConAg, with over 130,000 attendees. And now, back to the show. So what are you going to be speaking about at Influence?
Well, I'm going to talk about how to build a business in a niche or in an industry or a market. I've done this a couple times, and, I say, what's your industry and what's your topic? And if you're going to speak in the business world, you've got to speak on something that helps companies make more money. And it's not about love and peace and all that stuff. It's like, what do you get? Teamwork. Okay, how is teamwork going to make me more money? So I try to get people to realize everything you do has to be focused on improving the bottom line. And everything does. Teamwork, leadership, compatibility, all those things, if you do it right, holding people accountable, will achieve better results, the bottom line. So you got to turn it around. I used to speak on life balance and life purpose. Well, it's the same concepts for your business. It's got to be balanced. It's got to be on purpose. You got to have a vision, have goals. It's just change it to the industry that you're at, rather than just kind of I'm not saying motivational speaking is bad. I always do some in my programs, but it's great. I love it. But you got to go home after the session. There's no more add-ons. From my perspective, there could be, but I could probably do 50, 60, 70, 80 hours of programs right now. Just call me. Let's go. And just because I've got so many topics that I've done over the years, you go up to somebody's office, they call you, and well, yeah, I can. Can you do one on how to manage change order problems? Yeah, sure. Can you do one on improving field productivity? Yeah, sure. I'll do it. Can you do one? Because I know the industry well enough that I could create a great program. how to motivate your foreman to show up on time. Yeah, I could do that. And these are all things that came out of the business of construction. Because if you're a business owner, you got to fix all these problems, right? So anyway, maybe I got rambling there.
It's okay. Well, then there's a question I want to ask you from a previous guest who had a big focus in the meetings industry, and she mentioned that the disruption is happening in the meetings industry, and speakers haven't necessarily been impacted by it yet. Many have, but what are you doing as you think towards next year with the disruption and uncertainty in the world? How are you preparing and being proactive, basically thinking about how that's going to impact your business as a speaker and what you're going to do to get in front of it?
Well, that's a good question. And fortunately, I made those moves around 2010. The economy went in the toilet. Construction went to zero after all the financial crisis. And I had to make a move. I closed my construction company, and I had to focus more on income from speaking. And that's when I got into coaching. So half my business now or more is coaching. And so I did 20 years, 30 years of speaking emails to clients. People calling me. I had 7,000 people on my newsletter, and I didn't solicit them. They just keep coming. When I go speak, they want to be on my newsletter, so I get them. So I built it up, and so then I started offering coaching. And but the real key is these peer groups. You get these guys and gals in these peer groups, and they never want to leave. It's like a sorority or fraternity. They're not leaving. They want to come. We went right through COVID. I only missed one meeting. All the way through COVID, we had meetings with 20 guys in each meeting. They're paying me a monthly retainer, which equals or greater my speaking revenue. And, it's simple. It's 2 days, twice a year. And I got 3 of those groups. It's a lot easier than doing 40 speeches and flying all over the country, right? So I pivoted when my construction, I just decided to close it because it was kind of a disaster. Then COVID hit later. Now, during COVID, we kept going with our peer groups and consulting and coaching. I did a few online Zoom sessions, but not, conventions basically stopped, right? So there wasn't any work. So I'm set. I don't need, I've got everything in place, and I get more speaking. Fantastic. I'll get it. I've gotten a few more this year than normal because of economies picking up. Construction, and then now we got the tariff thing. We got all this crazy stuff going on, and the mortgage rates are high. Guys aren't building, permits are slow, and Amazon builds 5 million Amazon Fresh, and then they stop them all. So construction's weird. It's also local. Florida's booming, California's booming. Des Moines, Iowa is in the toilet. So you just got to. Why? I don't know, but it is. Michigan's slow. But so you learn this stuff by working with all these guys from all over the country.
Sure.
But the pivot was diverse. Be diverse. Yeah, there's a lot of money in an industry that's big enough, and just workshops, peer groups, consulting, coaching, speaking, training, workshops, facilitation. God, there's so much stuff you can do. You can even come in and help build systems.
Then what is a question that you would like to ask a future guest on Speakernomics?
Right. How do you generate a continuous flow of leads, real ones, for your business, whether it's speaking, coaching, consulting, facilitation, workshops? Just how do you keep the flow coming? I know what I'm working on, but I'm always trying to make it better because even at my relatively good level of success, I can always do more. But it's just what works, and I go to this, do YouTube, do this, do a podcast, so I try, it'll work because it's not me. Can I try something else? So what works?
Let's do a quick recap then based on George's hard-hat advice. Number one, a lot of people start out with this grander vision, but then learn the need to focus on an industry. George made that focus and then targeted the industries that brought him, so to speak, to speaking. Target the industries that you know and know you. Focus on what you know and who you can really help. Number 2, if you really want to succeed as a professional speaker and you have industry expertise, then you often have to work as hard at the speaking part as much or more than you did in your earlier career. Great speakers don't come easily for most, so never take for granted how much you should focus on speaking, and don't over-rely too much on just your industry expertise. Knowing the language and culture is crucial, even like with the construction industry. You can fake some of it, but don't fake it if you can't make it. Number 3, whether you're writing a book or not, remember to offer your expertise also with articles to industry publications. It's a great way to get some additional publishing. It may not always be a source for leads, but it's a great way historically to help with SEO, as well as to really help you get known into your industry. George, I'm looking forward to seeing you at Influence. Any last closing thoughts before we speak ourselves off this stage?
Well, I've got the 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock session, so I'd love to have you attend. And also, I'm not doing anything at 5 o'clock, so I'll be glad to sit down with you one-on-one. It's one of my favorite things to do is help speakers figure out their purpose and their vision and their mission for, how to do better. So if I can help, we'd love it. I'd love it.
Absolutely. I'll be there. Friends, make sure to join us at Speakernomics.com and let your voice be heard. I'm Kenneth Shark-Kinney, your host of the National Speakers Association's podcast, Speakernomics, and this has been another fantastic episode of the show. Thank you, George, for your service to NSA and for lending your voice to the show. And to everyone listening, thank you for the privilege of your time. And remember, Speakernomics is a podcast where you'll learn to speak, get paid, repeat.